So our goal is to make this MMoP meeting the place for parliamentarians, where space is not technique, and where we exchange views about space strategy and relevant space solutions in the countries. Of course, our goal is to exchange, to give ideas about what is possible in the countries. And our motto is, what is possible in my country may be possible also in my country too. So it's by the example, by hearing what you are doing in your country, maybe it can be interesting in my country too. So we try to convince the other one by the utility, the benefits of space application in the countries. Of course, we are from different countries. Some countries has a lot of difficulties with the weather, with overflowing, with heating. So we have different problems, and what is very interesting is to exchange about that. So I propose to give you the floor, and maybe we can ask. You can ask questions to them.
Antoine Meunier from lachroniquespatiale.com. A question for both of you. Don't you believe that this IAC in Paris is probably the rehearsal, the repetition, sorry, for the next ministerial?
For the next ministerial of ISA?
Yeah. The ministerial?
No.
Yes.
No.
Absolutely not.
Can I directly respond by saying no to this? Because the ministerials, of course, only for ISA. And you can already see in this round that there are not just ISA member states here, but even more. And I think this is the importance of IAC, that we bring together, or not we, but the organizers, thank you for that, Dominique, and the others, but that there are a lot of members of parliament and governments from all over the world. And I have to say that I'm very glad to meet the colleagues here, because we not just discuss on what the problems in our regions are, but we can also, and that's something that I hope to do with all of you, extend on the working together, on the cooperation, and that we will see that space is really something for everybody, that space is in fact a common heritage of mankind, and that we work together on this to keep it that way.
Maybe you can clarify the role of the group, because they are, in my opinion, gatherings on an international level that are called UN or UNOSA, UN. Huh?
Europe and the world. Here it's a world.
Yeah, UN, that's what I mean. It's called UN, in my opinion. So I'm not a parliamentarian, just a journalist. So maybe you can explain.
Just, you are a journalist.
you can explain what makes this group special and why it is needed when we have all these other international organizations already, globally.
Sophie, tu veux y aller? No. Well, this place is completely different from the others. Usually, parliamentarians and ministers gathering from the same continents, let's say. Here, it's across the continents. This is completely different. So we are free from everything. So we are not ESA, we are not ESA, we are not Chinese, we are all that. It's all together. And so what is interesting, it's across our habitual relations. And so this is very important to hear the problems and the solutions, especially the solutions from other countries, and to exchange between us. Most of the meeting are between Europeans, between Americans, or between Chinese. Here, no, it's everybody. So we launched 3 years ago another vision of this meeting. So, and what is really the difference? Here, the I would say the politicians are actors. They make, by themselves, they make a presentation on the topics that we proposed. They chose the first, on the second, or the third one. But they are actors. They are not just listening something that coming from specialists, from experts. We are actors, and so because we are speaking the same language, because we don't use technical words, so we understand space. And it's the same for you, huh? I'm sorry. We politicians and press is for once is the same. We don't like space because space is too technical, and the communication is made by engineers. And so they are speaking like engineers. It's normal, but it's not their job to communicate. And so we don't understand, and well, they speak too much techniques about many technical things, and we are not interested by that. We are interested by solutions. And here we are speaking about space solution, or even by problems a country can have, and then he can hear that there are space solution in another country. So then after they can discuss and they can exchange. And then of course after we ask specialists to explain and to come in the country and so and so. But it's important that in a sector who is so heavy in financially so heavy, it's $1 trillion in the world, the decision makers cannot be absent of an important economic sector. They cannot be absent. We are decision makers. We have to be aware about this so important sector.
Maybe this is a unique place here in this conference in between parliamentary, where we can talk not from finance, not from region fightings, not from competition. We are talking about mankind. We are talking about good ideas for the earth, good idea for our inhabitants, far away from very technical and political issues that we have to deal with. We can do that in the conference, European conference in November. We can do that even maybe in the next day here. But in this very particular meeting, we are talking about sharing experiences, sharing good ideas, trying to make the world better and space better, by the way.
Actually, as I mentioned, I'm from Turkey, and it's the first meeting I personally attending, and it's the second meeting attending officially from Turkey, and we see this platform a real, very valuable platform because of the things you have already explained. This space is something we should work as all countries in the world together on, and we should continue to democratize more. If we would try to organize this meeting 20 years ago, 30 years ago, maybe it wasn't that meaningful for many countries to join that kind of meetings. But now, all countries, all citizens of all countries are customers of space technologies. We all need space technologies to straighten our applications in different kind of areas, in environmental things, in agriculture, in urbanization, transportation, etc. And the main idea should be to democratize, not only to get benefits from space technologies, but also to be able to develop space technologies. And as Turkey, what we are trying to do is that in space technologies, we are trying to develop technology on our own, absolutely with many friend countries, with many different countries in collaboration, cooperation. But we think also that many other countries should be able to do that. And platforms like this IAF should help this way, I think. And I really, as personally and as a vice minister from Turkey, I really appreciate the work here done by the organizers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You raise the issue of United Nations. The United...
From Nigeria.
I'm from Nigeria. You raise the issue of United Nations. United Nations has a specialized office for outer space affairs. And the thrust of the meeting is the peaceful uses of outer space. You have the sub-legal committee, science and technology committee, and the general committee. And some decisions are taken at that level which must be domesticated. So you need a meeting like this to raise the awareness and consciousness of parliamentarians so that when decisions are taken in a place like United Nations or CEOs, it will be easily easy for parliamentarians to understand, what the importance of such decisions are, and then they'll be able to domesticate it. And in some cases, the parliamentarian at the ministerial level, the parliamentarian and the minister, they are involved in approval of policies, approval of budget, and especially in developing countries where people say we have not finished solving terrestrial problems, you want to go to space. But we always tell them that terrestrial problems are best solved from space. So raising the awareness and knowledge of parliamentarians, ministers, helps in ensuring that we are all in space to keep the peace. Thank you.
Oh, no, sorry. Vas-y.
And yeah, this space, I think, fundamentally is about lessons learned, about how we learn from each other and lift each other up. And it's also about how we inspire future generations in our own countries and learn how we've all done that work to reach for the stars and also better understand the earth beneath our feet. And as far as other forums, I don't think there would be another forum where we could participate in this dialogue, as not currently being a member of the ESA, not currently being a member formally of the EU. So for Iceland, this is a very important space for us to be able to contribute and also learn from.
Point of view? Well, it's a difference between UN, right? United Nations, okay. Well, first of all, the way I see it is UN was born after the Second World War, and the objective is peace and security. When you talk about parliament, for example, talking about country, it will depend which country you are, but how the government is structured. We have three powers. One of them is the legislative. So saying that, when you're at the UN, you propose the way of seeing of a country, and it's mostly done by the Foreign Affairs Ministry. What we're doing right now, and on our case, is the contact to the people. We are the direct contact to the people, and we are in charge of building up the frame of law in our country. By doing that, that's a huge difference. Once you are building the structure, which you need to understand how it will work, if you are intending or you have the vision to be part of what space may offer to your country. It might offer new jobs, it may offer investment, it may offer you a way of transit or cooperate, as Vice Minister was saying, with other countries to experiment materials in space. How will they evolve? So if you are, and space is in the project of your government, then you need to build up the rules for that to happen, because governments can only do what it's written in law. So you need that, and for me, and for us, for Mexican Parliament, that's the difference, to come here and understand how the frame of law has evolved in each of their countries. How do they get the budget? How are the space agencies working? Are there projects that include everyone? And it's a huge difference in between what the UN is doing and what we will do locally, even though it could be a federal congressman. That would be my point of view for towards.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So I think also just to maybe speak to the importance of this gathering, and I think in the future we need to see as different countries how we lobby partner departments to join us, because I mean the role of our work doesn't solely lie within the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, right? And so we need to look into how we're able to mobilize within our own countries, other maybe chairpersons of committees or whatever it may be, ministers, to come, so that maybe the work we're trying to do in lobbying them to earmark funding for space or for science, technology, and innovation, maybe if they come here, they'll get it, right? I mean, the colleagues from SANSA, the South African National Space Agency, they definitely know that after this particular trip, or my participation here, they have an ambassador in me for space in South Africa. There's no ways that I won't go back to my country not being able to advocate so strongly, but also hearing the different inputs from different countries reinforces our ability to be a motive force, to be an advocate of space in our own countries. Already I asked Frida from Belgium, I said, Frida, please send me your speech because it will enrich my archives, my reservoir, my pool of information, of data on how to lobby these other departments to contribute and invest in our budget. So for me, that is what this is about. A colleague from Mexico has also spoken. So he's spoken already about budget and coordinating budget, more coordinating departments. So we're learning from one another how in our different governments we have structured it, but we're also telling each other the great work that we are doing. So there may be capacity that Turkey has that South Africa doesn't have, and so if we're able to identify those capacities that we have that can enrich our prospective collaborative work, we can do that and go and tell whoever back in our country that, you know, actually there's an opportunity. So South Africa, we know that we have the greatest, one of the greatest geographic advantages in the world, right? And so we have that to contribute to the space market, the global space market. But from these engagements, we're able to also identify what Iceland can contribute and how we can then work together instead of working and operating in silos. So I think this opportunity also strengthens that. As a member of parliament, we get a lot of presentations, lots of presentations. And now with the virtual committee meetings, it's just presentation on presentation. And when the department reports to us to say, we're thinking of an international cooperation with this country, with that country, it's all good and well to go and do your own reading on it. It's even better to hear colleagues from Germany, from Mexico, from Turkey, from Nigeria, saying what their country can contribute to the global space market and saying, okay, maybe the department was correct, maybe SANSA was correct. We as a committee endorse and support that particular international cooperation. So it's some sort of oversight in its own nature, and I think that's really what we look forward to learning. But I also have to be a marketer of my country and say that we really encourage everyone to go and visit our pavilion, which is K18, yeah? K18, so we want to, you can even write it there in that article and put it out there, that we really encourage for everyone who will be participating in the conference to visit our pavilion, which is K18. Thank you.
I don't want to repeat anything my colleague said because, everything was right, and I feel the same way. We are all space enthusiasts here, and this is one important thing for this meeting, because in our country sometimes we are the nerds. We are the people who don't focus on Earth but on space, and this is a very good meeting where we can bring both together. Yeah, all of us, we think it's clear that a lot of global problems can only get solved if you use space technology, satellites, or even other kinds of technologies. But it's something we really have to fight for in our countries, especially when it comes to budget things. In Germany, for example, we are having a heavy discussion about our actual budget for this year. We are very tight. We have to cut in nearly every ministry. So it's a really tough fight we are having for money for space programs. Here I got a lot of new arguments for that fight. Like I said in my presentation, I'm responsible for the sustainable strategy, and a lot of things who I'm working on are connected to space. For example, we in Germany we want to accelerate the building of renewable energy, and we have a tough discussion with a lot of citizens in our country about where to put a windmill, where to do solar plants, and if we have the technology to identify the best and the most efficient places for that technology, we are helping to develop aims or to achieve goals our government already fixed. For that, it's so important to come together, to get new arguments and to get a lot of support. And sometimes I have the impression that I'm fighting on a loose yeah, but it's important to come together, and there were a lot of aspects I've never heard before in all of your inputs. So there are a lot more things we can work together on. Yeah.
Sorry, I have to speak about the gender issue. Because I'm looking at the space, and I think as members of parliament, we need to advocate for the deliberacy in gender equity broadly within science, technology, and innovation, and even more so space, because it's a little corner, there's some people there. What are they doing? They're looking, oh, okay. So no one's looking and how many women are there. In South Africa, no one's looking on how many young black women are there. It remains lily white and old. And so we also need to speak about the deliberacy of us monitoring gender equality, inclusivity, and representation within the space program. If we're saying that citizens keep complaining on, what are you guys doing, right? Citizens don't have a buy-in on what we're doing. They won't have a buy-in if it doesn't look like them. If the space program does not look like a woman, then why would she even care about it? So in part and parcel of making sure that session 3, the image of space, we need to ensure that within it, it's representational, it's inclusive, it's intersectional, so that even when we're saying it contributes to monitoring, let's say, doing remote sensing for us to be able to monitor disasters to ensure food security, we know that mothers bear the greatest brunt in terms of ensuring that their children are fed. The UN has lots of research on that. And so we need to be able to communicate to a mother, and it ought to be another woman who, when I look at you and I say, oh, she's saying that this thing of space is going to contribute to, oh, okay, I believe her because she looks like me, right? So we need to also speak about this thing of representation within the space program in all our countries. Thanks.
For country connected to space, it's also for country non-connected to space or on the way to be connected to space. And our goal is that the country not yet connected to space come here and we can inspire them, give ideas of benefits of space for their country. That's very important. Yes?
Jeff Faust of Space News. I wanted to sort of build on the discussion you've been having so far. You've talked about this exchange of ideas. Curious if you can provide any sort of specific examples of things you heard today, or maybe you heard at previous meetings of this group that you've applied or want to apply when you go back home to your own country's policies.
Yeah, well, one of the most inspiring moments that I heard discussed up here today was when the government of South Australia was talking about the launches that were taking place and the influence and benefit to the local Aboriginal communities there that had been impoverished, and how it infused the economy and inspired the people even when there were mission failures. And I think that that's a really important point, is that even when there is a failure, there's still an opportunity to inspire and to have a net positive impact on the local community.
But Iceland has this capacity as well. I mean, you had Sky Aurora knocking on your doors, launching from there. So, I mean, you have been in the situation that South Australia is right now.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely true. But at the same time, Iceland is not really going to become a launch state, primarily because of where it is geographically and the weather specifically. But in terms of the most diverse set of terrestrial analogs for both the Moon and Mars that exist anywhere on Earth in close proximity to one another, if you have technology, if you have astronauts who are headed to the Moon or eventually Mars, they have to come to Iceland first. So we certainly have capacity and we have things to offer, but learning from other countries and hearing about other technologies, this is the space where you can really come back home and then apply what you've learned and figure out how we can inspire and impact our own country in a better, more efficient manner.
No launches from Iceland?
Well, we certainly have the capacity to launch in the future, and there are, in fact, legislation was just passed recently, and we've signed, we're working with the UK as well in terms of their launches. So we're certainly involved in launches that are taking place with our partners, and we'll be engaged in cooperating with them to test those technologies and also advocate for how we can do more to support those missions.
Maybe I can give you an example of what parliamentary conference are very beneficial for everywhere. I can take an example from the conference yesterday. Took place in the Senate only for European countries, but this is the same idea. We talk a lot, what we didn't do, but maybe next time, about pollution in space. And pollution is something in space that you cannot solve by yourself. A nation can do that. It's not possible. And we are implementing regulation about transportation in space in Europe. But again, if we do that in Europe, it's good, it's nice, but it's not enough. So this is typically the kind of topics that we are discussing there, and then push our government and push our finance to finance projects about pollution, about regulation in space, which are main topic for humanity, because we are going to know how to put some regulation for exploration, for exploitation of Mars, of resources outside in the space. So this is something we have together to push together, and this is the place where we can discuss that far away from our different government.
France is increasing its budget on SSA and STM. Is that what you're saying?
I hope. I'll push
You're
it.
making the policy.
I'll push. Well, not alone.
So one thing, Jeff, for your concrete question, I think it's a little bit. It's not like I can go out of here and say, well, it was very interesting that Turkey is going to the moon and we're going to do the same. Yes, we can. Yes, we will, as soon as possible, hopefully. But this is, I think, not the exact outcome. But what we achieved here today was to figure out what we're doing the same, which is, of course, monitoring, using the data in order to improve citizens' life, to look at disaster control, to help with the with the situation on the ground. There were a lot of different examples. The situations are always unique, of course, on the ground, but the technology that we use is quite similar, and I think it's a good trend to see. What we definitely all need to do more, and there was something that I spoke about, was to figure out how to close the gap on the need on the ground and the data that we have. We have a lot of data through Copernicus, but also through all the other missions that all the member states do, and all the states do with their agencies. A lot of great information and data, but we don't know or we don't use them to the full extent. We have citizens on the ground, we have especially cities and municipalities that could use this data more efficiently, but they don't know that the data exists. And we need to close this gap. We need to be the bridge, and we need to help to figure out, to bring together those people who say, I have this and that problem in my province, in my region, whatever. I gave the idea or the example of tree counting, or parking tickets is a great example, I think, but also very important, the prevention of flooding. We saw that in a flood region where we knew beforehand that the soil is saturated with water and cannot keep any more water, and a flood was yet to come. And we need to bridge them together with the people who know, I have all this data, I know exactly how many trees are in your city, I can count them, I know where the cars are parked, and I know how the situation in the soil is. And then we need to find those people who can make out of data, information, and usable outputs. And this is something where we still need to work on, and I think this is something that we can take home. And the last thing is something that there was mentioned concerning the idea of sustainable space, but also of a lot of different other problems, like we have with climate change, like we have with energy solutions, also when it comes to resource mining. And if we want to go further beyond, we need to have a different infrastructure in space, but that is very hard to build up by any single country. And so therefore these are projects in which we need to come together. And I think for this, here is a great space, because we're not talking about a concrete budget. We're not fighting against each other about who has what right to do with whom at what time, but we're looking each other in the eye and say, these are problems that we need to solve. And we can start here to get ideas on how to solve them. And this is something that I'm eager to do with all of you, and also a lot of more colleagues, because we need an international space legislation, and we need to go forward with this to have a very clear vision on where we want to go and how we want to use space and benefit for everyone, so that really all of mankind can profit. And I think this is a good starting point to start this discussion.
And the question to close the gap is a question that you address to the space agencies. So this is also very interesting. There are messages for the space agencies.
Okay. I didn't introduce myself. Thorsten Krenning from Spacewatch Global. I hear what you're saying, and that's great. I support it fully. No. Earlier this week, we had another event in the Westin Hotel called the World Satellite Business Week. The representation of the business sector is upcoming $1 trillion euro, choose your currency, sector. They're setting facts. Niklas spoke about the regulation and the legislation. There's still a delta. So how are your countries matching that? How are you moving forward? Because at the moment we see the business sector moving full throttle into the sector. And then we see the governmental machines trying to keep up speed with that. What is impossible, of course, but what can you do to bridge that gap? To lead or not to follow? Choose a wording, what works?
Step by step. Here, this meeting is a new meeting. Huh? It's a new way to discuss between us. So, but you're right to ask this question, because they are all decision makers, and they vote the budget, and they have to intervene in the parliaments. So it's also so it's also to be aware about those questions. But here, well, we are not ready, for me, to answer to those questions. We are just, but we will evolve. We will evolve. But first, we have to make this group bigger, and to involve more parliamentarians, more ministers. And then, of course, we will have questions like you ask about how to regulate. But I think this is a question more maybe for les Nations Unies, for the United Nations. You have commission who are working about that. Let's this group growing just by exchange, by new ideas, and I would like to ask them after the press conference the next ideas for our meeting. Is it about climate change? Because this is directly with our problems. What you said also, but this is budget, and for me it's inside the parliaments. But I would like to ask them, what will be our next theme? Is it climate change, and how can we make our cities, our rural areas more sustainable, or can we work to avoid or to work about risk management? Maybe it can be only one question, only one panel. So I would like to ask them if they prefer to have three topics or only one topics. Was really interesting now. What did you think about it?
Maybe that ought to be the next theme. That question, the last question. Yeah. On how do we create, what role do we play as legislators to create a conducive legislative environment for us as government not to be followers, but to be leaders of our countries? I mean, our president is of the view that we must create a conducive environment for economic participation. And so I think maybe that should be the next question. So your question should be the next question going into...
Oh, it's trademarked.
Yeah. Oh, it's trademarked.
Oh, you will be invited.
But I really, I think it's
and you can make an statement.
But I think it's a very important question directly put at us. Yeah.
For your question, I agree. I think we should have 3 panels again. If you ask me today, and I think we also have to adapt to what's happening in the world, right? And I think at the moment the 3, like if we do another round, I would suggest the question of international legislation, which is going in this direction, as you mentioned. Yeah. How can we become... I don't think that we can be complete leaders, because we always have to react to what is happening. Sure. And sometimes you don't think... sometimes you don't think about stuff that crazy business people come up with, and then you have to regulate that again. But of course we should try to be upfront. The second thing is the question, I believe, of peace and war, of safety and security in space, which is getting more and more relevant on Earth and in space. I think it is important that, especially with this situation, with the ISAT testing, we need to get away from weapon usage, and we need to understand and make especially militaries understand that if we start a war up in space, we will all be losers. Sure. Because we will only destroy all the infrastructure that we have. And I think it's important to at least have the discussion on what is at stake. And the other part is then also coming back to safeguarding our resources, is the question on space debris and how we can manage this, because we have to get rid of all that trash, and we need to bring it down collectively. Those, at the moment, for me, that would be the 3 most important points. But of course they change. The question on climate change is a great one that we are continuously working on. So maybe we need to have not just 3, maybe 4 or 5 panels. And also the question of sustainability is something that we can bring adherence. And Hopefully next year we'll have something very concrete to talk about after the European Union have introduced the very first sustainability guidelines that we're just discussing at this moment, and hopefully until next year have finalized. And so therefore there's something concrete to discuss about with us.
I have to say that I totally agree to what my two colleagues said, but I would like to come back to the first topic, which is a space solution for cities. During your discussions, what concrete elements emerge for citizens? Because we are talking about space for all.
What I will ask to IAF to share all the presentation between us, because this is very important. So for this, I give the floor to the colleagues to explain if they have a concrete idea. But there are many. But just like this, so to remember one, we have there are so many things.
Not necessarily one, but how many solutions? What type of solutions?
But I can say nearly each one come with solutions. So each speaker come with solutions. So that's interesting. This is just to open the mind and to say, well, oh yes, maybe I don't find to this, or I'm not aware about these space solutions, and that's the goal. And what I would like to say about what you just say, I'm a little afraid if we are putting the line a little bit too high, we will not involve all the countries who are not yet involved in space. So we have to be very careful to be accessible. Don't make the same error of professionals. We have to, we have to stay accessible for all countries. And this doesn't mean that, I don't know, in 4 or 5 years or 2 years or 3 years, I don't know, we can make groups, different groups on different level, but that's not really our goal. But anyway, let's go step by step, but I think you have not to make the same error of professional, of experts, of engineers. No?
I'm a trained engineer and
you are.
journalist by passion, so...
And what did you think about a panel with the press? Just to, because we have the same problem. Yes, we can evolve. No.
Invite us.
Yeah?
There's a drink, and we are happy.
No, because I think you have the same problem. No, you don't think you have the.
But involve us. That's the best what you can do.
Okay.
You have
one panel with the press. Next one. Yeah.
This is the usual recipe for journalists. Invite them, take a drink.
I would say, we are subject focused press with a lot of knowledge and wealth combined that we also can mirror back to you. Because I think most of you have a day job and that does not include space 100%. No. So it's part of, it's a minor part. Sure. So,
yes,
you can get our opinion.
Yes, sure.
Just behind you.
Yeah. Okay, Zainab.
I just want to make a small contribution. I'm late, I'm so sorry, because I had a very long way to be in Paris from Uzbekistan, and I'm so sorry for the delay. And I try to figure out what's exactly you were talking about on this round table. I see that the major point, this is a current tradition, yes, I totally agree with all of us, all of you, and I see that the major starting point for us is to build up an ecosystem, which is a comprehensively planned ecosystem. That will include the women participation in the space, that will include the space pollution, that will include the legal perspective, legal aspect, that will also contain data perception. And I think on this point, maybe we need to more focus on, we are all parliamentarians, so we are on all the parts of the legislation, and also we have the members from the government, and these are all, I think, legally binding section of the...
You are lower.
Yes, yes, I'm a lawyer, so I want to take the floor to the legal perspective. So we need to have a good engagement between the technical perspective and the legal perspective, because everything will directly be related with the legal perspective, because we are the lawmakers. So in order to enhance the space ecosystem, we need to think what we will do for the next steps on our parliamentarians, and on the legal perspective, I think. I'm a lawyer, I'm so sorry. It's really hard for me to look directly on the technical basis. Actually, legal perspective is also another kind of technical perspective, and I think that will be really helpful.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
But like, for example, I mean, I'm an so it's Department of Science, it's Higher Education, Science and Innovation, right? So you're not misplaced by wanting to raise the legal issues, because he's so interested in...
Maybe.
In what was on my badge?
Oh, in the international law.
Yeah, so he's so interested in international law for space, right? Yeah. Am I saying it right? Yeah.
International space law. Yeah.
International space law. So you guys already should be having a conversation, because you're the lawyer, right? Then at some point the engineers and, they must come and tell us, but we must also be telling them. For me, as a young woman or a mother who's interested in ensuring food security, I must be able to say to Sansa, how come you guys can't, or as a farmer, how come you guys can't tell us on time that there's going to be a flood that's going to impact on my farming, which contributes to the sustainable livelihood of my community, right? And then Sansa's going to say, oh, no, but we gave the information to the department. So it becomes our responsibility as members of parliament to hold the department to account, to say, or the municipality to account, to say, but how come they had this data, but this data, the gap, never got to wherever it got to? And if we want to tighten the laws to make sure that the pollution or whatever that's taking place, you must come on board to help us strengthen those laws, and put together that bill that might have to be passed in our different countries. So I think we all have a role to play. I mean, as we're sitting here, I'm already thinking about, if we're saying we want a more inclusive space program, how certain are we that our higher education departments or programs in our countries are inclusively offering the skill so that more young people can participate? We don't only want, my colleague from Nigeria, we don't only want the young people from Stellenbosch University to be the ones who are studying programs that can enable them to participate in the space program. So Stellenbosch is in Cape Town. It's very nice in Cape Town. Colleagues will know it's the Europe of South Africa, right? We also want young people in rural South Africa to have access to these skills that can enable them an opportunity to participate in the space program. So I don't think that, my colleague, I don't think that what we realize today is that we also need advertisers, we need marketers, because you're right, young people in South Africa definitely know about NASA, but do they know about Sansa in their own country, right? And it's because NASA's in movies. NASA's on a McDonald's what bottle. So I think there is space for a lot of people to get involved in the space program. I don't think that it only needs engineers and parliamentarians. I think it needs a whole lot. It needs a huge ecosystem for it to be where it ought to be. Yeah.
Sansa has the best opportunities because they're the movie character from Game of Thrones.
Absolutely.
So.
Okay, there are some more questions?
Another dimension of inclusivity, what are you doing to get other countries to participate in this group?
The problem of such a such a meeting, well, it's the parliamentarians are elected, huh? And prime minister is the same. So, so they are changing every 4 years, 5 years. So it's a little bit difficult for let's say the Italian are not here because they are voting this week, I think. So so we make a lot of contacts. We IAF send a lot of email to all countries we know, so all contacts we have to ask to come. But it takes a lot of time from the bureau, from the chamber, and so to decide. And then now we are in beginning September, so all the chambers and Senate are starting just now. So it's a little bit difficult to organize. So our dream is, of course, to contact all the nations, to have contact everywhere. But it takes time. The fact that you have to, what I said, we have to make the tam-tam. So countries by countries. Next time it's in Azerbaijan. Well, I ask in Azerbaijan to make to ask the countries all around to make the publicity of our MMoP meeting. So like this, we will extend, but it takes time, and so it's not something which is going just like this. And so you can address your demand to the politicians, but it's the parliament who is paying, so it's a decision of the bureau of the parliament. So it's a heavy machine. It's a heavy machine, but the goal is to have connected countries, but not only connected countries to space. It's also to convince other countries to come, just to make the sensibilization first, to hear, and so to ask questions to us, and then we'll answer with with the same words to them. And I think for me is the best way.
May I make a last point? We will be really happy to welcome you in Istanbul in 2025. This is the last point for me. Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be in Paris. Bonjour.
Okay, it's where? You will tell me. You will tell me. Yeah.
Name and shame. I think it's important to say those members are not here and they should be present.
So it's our responsibility to convince when we have other meetings in our country to talk and to convince.
Thank you. One of the journalists made a statement as if the journalists are there and the scientists are here. I think they were part of us. I remember one of the International Aeronautic Congress that I attended, and the gentleman that gave the opening address was a journalist, and he spoke very well to the administration of everybody present at that Congress. I think the press has a role to play. Has a role to play to educate the public, not only the public, even the politicians, the parliamentarians. And many people believe that whatever the journalists say is the truth, because they investigate, they do a lot of research, and to some extent we expect that they are not biased. They are the ear and the eye of the people. So I think the journalists, they have a role to play. And I think subsequent meetings like this should give a bigger role to journalists as participants, not just to organize a press conference like this, but to be participants. Whether they like it or they don't like it, they should tell us. And they should help us in raising the level of awareness globally, whether we are connected or not connected to space. Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry, I have to go to the bureau, but I prefer to be here, but I have to go to the bureau. So you can stay and you can continue the conference, so no problem. So please exchange your cards with the journalists so they know who is who. And you will be in Azerbaijan next year?
Hopefully, sir.
Yes? Okay, fine. So you will be included in the panel. You can be sure.